Hi, this is 100 Films and Other Stuff, a countdown of my favourite 100 movies and occasionally other stuff. At 100 is Martin Scorsese's and Michael Henry Wilson's A Personal Journey with Martin Scorsese through American movies. It is sad to say it, but A Personal Journey with Martin Scorsese through American movies is one of only 2 documentaries on this list. Given how long documentaries have been around, there ought to be more. But alas, they are just not sexy enough. The first films ever shown to the public were documentaries shot by the Lumiere brothers. The very first program ran for 20 minutes and comprised 10 mini-documentaries, or as the French called them, actualities. The subject matter was as banal as any Facebook newsfeed today, with shots like this, one of the very first in cinema of workers leaving the Lumiere factory, men playing cards, a train arriving at a station, and a mother and father feeding their baby. It is quite disturbing to know that 120 years ago people found their babies' quite uninteresting lives worthy of being filmed. I am glad as a civilization we have moved on from all of that. Film number 2 from the Lumiere's first program, titled The Gardener, is the first joke ever filmed. And in case you're wondering, the first cat film, Cats Boxing, 1894. The cinema was obviously in its infancy, and so were documentaries, but by the beginning of the last century, travelogue movies had become quite popular, like this documentary, the rather appropriately but unimaginatively named Moscow Clad in Snow. Yep, exciting stuff. The travelogue documentary, however, did take the audience to the ends of the world, even if it was highly contrived. Nanook of the North by Robert Flaherty, probably the first feature-length documentary, is one such film. Even by today's standards, it is a very interesting movie and captured authentic details of a little-known culture. But it does have many stage scenes, and one scene in particular involving a gramophone would send any post-colonialism major into a meltdown. Look, he does not know what a gramophone is. Isn't it hilarious? The thing is, the actor playing Nanook knew what a gramophone was, but that would hardly meet with the audience's expectations, so they got him to play it for laughs, as the backwoods savage. In the late 20s, when cinema was seriously going through a visual purple patch, Dziga Vertov made a little documentary called Man with the Movie Camera. It is a masterpiece and should be watched by anybody interested in movies. As cinema matured, so did the documentary. Nations began to realise that cinema was a powerful tool for propaganda. The Nazi propaganda film Triumph of the Will by Leni Riefenstahl is perhaps to this day the best example of it. The subject matter is disturbing, the regime unethical and evil, yet the movie, at times, really is quite breathtaking. The Americans, not to be outdone, enlisted the help of Frank Capra to make a documentary series called Why We Fight, in order to show American soldiers why it was necessary to fight. Informative and to the point, the film used original footage from the enemy. It used this footage out of context to create an us versus them dichotomy. Traditional, free and democratic America against bad, fascist Germany and Japan. It is an extraordinary piece of propaganda filmmaking.
What fantastic dreams was this humorless man dreaming as he stood at Nuremberg and looked down on his fanatic followers?
In the Middle Ages, a plague of slavery descended on the world. Out of the wilds of Mongolia came a mighty army of fierce horsemen, led by Genghis Khan.
After the war, the technological advances which facilitated lighter, smaller and quieter cameras saw the advent of cinema verite and direct cinema. These styles of documentaries basically involve following a protagonist around and watching them go through their life, reacting to certain situations. Obviously, if the person you are following has some kind of crisis, it generally makes for better viewing. But captivating cinema can be found in the most unlikely of places, like this 1969 film, Salesman, which follows the trials and tribulations of 4 Bible salesmen. It really is quite gripping cinema, and also a fascinating social document of the time.
5% with the children. Now, whatever she is and what she imparts to them is how those children are going to grow up. And this is the age when they need it. Because if your house doesn't have a foundation, you've got no kind of a house. Does that make sense? There we are. There we are.
Or you could just follow Bob Dylan around.
Give me a cigarette. Give the anarchist a cigarette.
Modern documentaries have enjoyed growing popularity. They are no longer confined to public broadcasters, film festivals and classrooms, but sometimes even make celebrities out of their directors.
Well, here's my first question. Do you think it's a little dangerous handing out guns in a bank?
And are shot in glorious 70mm and shown in the cinema. Importantly though, they do not cost that much to make, especially compared to a normal movie, so the return for a small investment can be quite profitable. Also, the advent of the internet has allowed people greater access to documentaries. Now with the click of a button, you can find any documentary online. Anyway, Martin Scorsese's A Personal Journey Through American Cinema is basically Martin Scorsese sitting on a chair talking to the camera about the movies that have shaped the American cinema, and more importantly, him. He discusses all the great American genres such as the gangster film, the western, the musical, and he also looks closely at American B movies.
And what slipped through these cracks has always fascinated me. I mean, there were opportunities, there were projects that allowed for the expression of different sensibilities, offbeat themes, or even radical political views, particularly when the financial stakes were minimal. Less money, more freedom. I mean, the world of B films was often freer and more conducive to experimenting and innovating. The 40s directors found that they could exercise more control on a small budget movie than on a prestigious A picture. Also, they'd have less executives looking over their shoulder. They could introduce unusual touches, weave unexpected motifs, and even transform routine material into a much more personal expression. So in a sense, they became smugglers. They cheated and somehow got away with it.
This is not a groundbreaking documentary by any stretch of the imagination. It does not blow you away with its technique, but what it does do is make you want to see more films. Scorsese does not pontificate. He modestly contemplates the films he admires, displaying his obvious love of cinema. This is perhaps why I wanted this film in my top 100, because it reveals a man who is in love with the cinema, an affliction I too suffer from, quite willingly.
But I could also see great similarities between a church and a movie house. Both are places for people to come together and share a common experience. And I believe there's a spirituality in films, even if it's not one which can supplant faith. I find that over the years, many films address themselves to the spiritual side of man's nature. From Griffith's film Intolerance, to John Ford's The Grapes of Wrath, to Hitchcock's Vertigo, to Kubrick's 2001, and so many more. It's as if movies answered an ancient quest for the common unconscious. They fulfill a spiritual need that people have to share a common memory.